Okay.
Where should I go? Running to the basement?
I have to play with what I have.
No, I'm hungry.
If player and coach aren't getting along, that's what happens.
Season and yes, some videos came up with the movement. So I didn't, to be honest, I didn't aware that it was really similar to knowledge.
Carlos Alcaraz walked onto the Doha court on February 21st like a man who had already seen the scoreboard. 50 minutes later, he had 6-2, 6-1, 26th career title, 12th win from 12 matches to open the season, and a performance so controlled it barely registered as competition. Here's what the scoreline doesn't tell you. Fils had spent 8 months clawing back from a stress fracture that ended his French Open and cost him the rest of the season. First final since Tokyo 2024. Doha was supposed to be the chapter where the comeback became real. Instead, by 0-3 in the second set, the racket hit the court and the crowd could feel the distance between what this was supposed to be and what Alcaraz had apparently already decided it would be before he ever arrived.
Would you rather play Alcaraz than Sinner? He would take Alcaraz all day long.
He wants to take your best punch, know he can handle it. He just rips your heart out. It's like he wants to beat your mom too, right?
Alcaraz. I've played Novak here. I know how hard he is to beat, and for Alcaraz to do it, was a teenager still at the time, to do it was incredible.
That last part matters, because after the trophy went up, Carlos Alcaraz's coach started talking. And what came out wasn't post-match diplomacy. The preparation, the game plan, the specific read on Fils. Coming off that injury, all of it pointed toward a camp that hadn't just prepared to win in Doha. They prepared to make it look exactly like this. Fans landed on one word for it, humiliated, and the coach didn't exactly push back, because what happened on that court wasn't cruelty, but it also wasn't accidental. It was the particular coldness of a team that had already finished a match before the first ball was struck, then went out and proved it. In 2025, he left Doha in the quarterfinals. This year, he left having delivered something that felt less like a final and more like a formality scheduled weeks in advance. He shook hands the way you close a tab you already paid. If you want to hear Carlos Alcaraz's coach explain the whole thing, hit subscribe, because that breakdown is next and it reframes every minute of those 50.
Can anyone beat Carlos?
Alcaraz just too good.
Maybe even catch Djokovic.
I think Carlos wins this match to be the youngest to have ever won all 4 slams.
Carlos, he's so good.
Alcaraz is a joke right now.
There is a particular kind of athlete who doesn't announce what they're about to do. They simply do it and leave everyone else to figure out what just happened. Alcaraz arrived in Doha carrying a season record that hadn't yet learned what a loss looks like. 12 matches, 12 wins. A start to the year so clean it almost reads as suspicious, like a man who decided in January that the calendar was going to bend around him rather than the other way around. Doha specifically had unfinished business attached to it. 12 months earlier, he had walked out of this same tournament in the quarterfinals without the kind of statement that world number ones are supposed to make. That exit didn't generate headlines, but it stayed somewhere. In the film sessions, in the preparation room, in whatever conversations happen between a player and his coaching staff, when the season resets and everything gets rebuilt from scratch.
Contract, maybe some other stuff.
Maybe Carlos's dad and Juan Carlos had a different vision. Some people think maybe they couldn't get a contract together.
This shifts everything for Carlos.
A lot of players trying to catch me up. They study my game. They study how I play, trying to beat me, trying to challenge me.
When Samuel López stepped up as Alcaraz's head coach ahead of the 2026 season, the transition barely registered in mainstream coverage. Coaching changes at the top of the game tend to get treated as administrative, a reshuffle, business as usual. What rarely gets discussed is what a genuinely new coaching relationship changes beneath the surface. Fresh eyes on old footage draw different conclusions. A game plan for a specific opponent on a specific surface in a tournament that ended badly the previous year gets approached without the assumptions the previous setup carried into it. What those conclusions looked like heading into the Doha final is something only that Camp fully knows. What the court revealed is that Alcaraz stepped onto it with the body language of a man executing rather than competing. And the difference between those two things is visible if you know what to look for. Competing means reacting to what's in front of you. Executing means arriving somewhere you've already mentally been.
I don't want this to be the end for his career. I want him to keep going and see if he can maybe even catch Djokovic. He's got a long way to go to do that, obviously, with 24. But the one thing with Alcaraz that's so amazing to me is he wins the big moments in every match that he plays. He wins the 5-setter.
You go from coaching to like literally there's no settlement, there's nothing, you're done. That's how it goes in tennis. And maybe in this situation, it wasn't entirely Carlos's doing.
Arthur Fils, standing across the net, was competing. The comeback story Fils carried into Doha was genuine in every sense. 8 months removed from a stress fracture, grinding, through rehabilitation while the tour moved without him, rebuilding match sharpness through a draw that brought him all the way to his first final since Tokyo 2024. None of that is small. Tennis doesn't reward absence kindly, and the muscle memory that separates top 10 tennis from top 30 tennis erodes in ways that don't surface until a final puts them under a particular kind of pressure. They surfaced fast. Alcaraz was returning early throughout, taking time away before Fils could establish any rhythm, forcing errors at a pace that gave no space for recovery between points. For a player still recalibrating the physical confidence that an injury at that level strips away, that tempo isn't just uncomfortable, it's exposing in a very specific way. The forced errors weren't random. They kept appearing in the zones where a post-injury player's movement tends to lag behind instinct. The areas where the legs are asked to do something automatic and arrive half a beat late. By 0-3 in the second set, the racket hit the court. It wasn't a tantrum, it was a release valve, the visible surface of something that had been accumulating since the opening game. Frustration directed not at Alcaraz, but at the gap between where Fils knew he was capable of playing and where this match was actually allowing him to exist. The stadium shifted slightly in that moment, not against him, but around him. The way a room changes when someone stops holding something in. Alcaraz didn't look over, didn't register it by even a degree.
Great, there's no doubt about that, but you know who has a problem with it? The guy who served that it looks like, Novak.
Yeah, I hear that. I have the contract over there, but I haven't seen him yet. So,
Alcaraz than Sinner, he would take Alcaraz all day long.
He wants to take your best punch, know he can handle it. He just rips your heart out. It's like he wants to beat your mom too.
That stillness is worth sitting with, because it wasn't the stillness of someone ignoring what happened. It was the stillness of someone who'd already accounted for it. Dominance at this level rarely surprises the people delivering it. What reads as effortless from the outside is almost always the top layer of preparation, thorough enough that the match becomes the least complicated part of the week. The hours spent studying how a specific opponent moves under sustained pressure where the patterns fracture, which rally length starts generating errors. That work exists so that when the moment arrives, nothing needs to be solved in real time.
We have to thank Novak because he's pushing the ceiling higher and higher and putting the bar up higher and higher. At 38, I mean, Carlos Alcaraz is such an unbelievable athlete that I would assume that he could be playing for at least another 15 years. And if he is, he'll be at the top because he's so talented. His knowledge of the game and the knowledge of tactics already at his age.
López, working his first full season with Alcaraz as head coach, brought a different analytical lens to that process. And Fils, returning from 8 months away, represented a player whose game the tour understood well, but whose current game carried variables that hadn't been stress tested at this level since before the injury. How a player's footwork genuinely recovers from a stress fracture doesn't show up in a press conference. It shows up under sustained pressure in a final, when the legs are asked to do something instinctive. Alcaraz's camp had every reason to study exactly that. Whether the game plan was built around it is a question the court answered more clearly than any post-match interview could. And that's precisely where the coach's comments after the match become the most interesting part of this story, because in professional tennis, coaches rarely volunteer the internal language of a preparation week. The tactical specifics stay inside the camp. The film sessions don't get narrated publicly. What gets offered in post-match pressers is almost always a cleaned-up, diplomatic version of what actually happened.
Carlos's dad and Juan Carlos had a different vision. Some people think maybe they couldn't get a contract together, but Juan Carlos Ferrero also said, hey, I would love to continue. Alcaraz himself had a really nice post saying, look, basically, thank you for everything you You've been like a mentor to me and a coach since I was barely a teenager, and they've done all these amazing things together.
Gratitude for the opponent, credit to the player, broad strokes about hard work and focus. Nothing that reveals the architecture underneath. What Lopez offered after Doha didn't read like that. The framing around Alcaraz's preparation, the confidence built into it, the specificity of the read on fills. The way the camp approached the final, not as an open contest, but as something closer to a controlled exercise, landed differently than standard post-match language tends to. It carried the particular weight of someone describing a plan that worked rather than a performance that happened. There's a distinction there that tennis audiences pick up on quickly, and the reaction online reflected it. Fans weren't just celebrating a dominant win. They were reacting to the suggestion that the dominance had been authored in advance. The word humiliated didn't come from Alcaraz. It didn't come from the coaching staff directly. It came from the audience processing the gap between what Fils arrived with and what the match allowed him to express, and then mapping that gap onto the framing the coach provided afterward. When a team signals that they studied an opponent's post-injury vulnerabilities closely enough to predict where the frustration would surface, and the frustration surfaces exactly there, the word fans reach for stops being dominant and starts being something sharper. That's the part worth sitting with. Not whether Alcaraz is a great player, that's settled, but whether this specific performance in this specific tournament represented something more deliberate than a great player simply playing well. The promise Alcaraz apparently made about Doha before the tournament began isn't verifiable in the traditional sense.
We're seeing a more explosive tennis player ever than Alcaraz, right? As athletes evolve, is it possible that someone in 15 years' time can be even more athletic than Alcaraz, or is he at the very, very top? I mean, I don't see how it's possible, but you said that 15, 20 years ago as well.
Yeah, you said that with Rafa too, right?
I don't see how it's possible.
Exactly. But his just pure explosion, his fast twitch, I would put up with any athlete in the world, period. It's just ridiculous.
What is verifiable is that the match unfolded in a way that made it look like a promise being kept, rather than a result being earned. Those two things can look identical from the outside. The difference lives entirely inside that preparation room, and the coach left the door open just wide enough for everyone watching to form their own conclusions. The trophy ceremony told a quieter version of the same story. Fils addressed the crowd with the kind of transparency most runners-up avoid. "Sorry for the final," he said, the laugh underneath it carrying more weight than the words themselves. "Think of the last 8 months." The crowd responded with genuine warmth, because there is something distinctly likable about a player who refuses to perform composure under difficult circumstances and instead just tells the truth about how it felt. Alcaraz laughed too. The moment landed well.
Like a mentor to me and a coach since I was barely a teenager, and they've done all these amazing things together. So it is shocking. It's a bummer.
This one kind of comes sudden, middle of December. You feel like there was a lot of rumors swirling over the last, 18 months, watching maybe Carlos's documentary, seeing maybe the dynamic with Juan Carlos and Carlos, obviously, just maybe clashing styles just a little bit, but their on-court performances, it was incredible. It's bar none. Multiple slams the last couple of years, #1 in the world, has another opportunity to do something in the game of tennis.
But underneath it sat something worth acknowledging. A 21-year-old measuring the distance between where he is and where he needs to be, out loud in front of a full stadium. That gap isn't permanent. Everyone in that building understood that. It was a data point, not a verdict. Alcaraz spoke about mental strength, about his team, about the errors being decisive. No extra weight placed on the win, no theatrics, which is, in its own way, the most telling response available. When a result lands exactly where you expected it to, there isn't much that needs adding. 26 career titles, 12 wins from 12 matches. A tournament he exited without ceremony in the quarterfinals a year ago, now finished with a final that generated more conversation in its aftermath than most 5-set matches manage. The coaching staff behind this week's preparation hasn't gone further publicly than what they said after the trophy, and the court had already done most of the talking. If you've made it this far, you already know this channel doesn't do surface level. Every upload goes deeper than the scoreboard, deeper than the press conference answer, deeper than what the highlights show you. Subscribe if that's the tennis coverage you're looking for, and turn notifications on because we don't slow down between uploads. The season is moving fast, and so are we.